Namaste, aloha, and welcome again to more Krishna book reading. Please accept my respects. My name is Janapati Das, and we will be reading a new story today, of course, from the Krishna book, translated and purported upon by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Now, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, he was the spiritual master of my spiritual master, and when he was in his 70s, he left his very comfortable abode in living in Vrindavan, India, and took a ship, a freightliner, to the United States. Why did he do that? Because his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, had 50 years ago or so instructed him to bring the science of bhakti yoga to the people of the West. Because at the time, not very few people had actually heard of Krishna. Nowadays, it's more of a common name, and that's really mostly done because Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada left. Instead of some Vaishnavas were actually just living in India and didn't think it was worth trying to reach out to the people of Europe or the United States and teach. But his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta, knew that Krishna consciousness was for everyone, all living entities. And so Bhaktivedanta in his 70s went to the United States, took like 3 months. He apparently had a stroke, and he got there in the dead of winter with very little money and only one sort of contact. And from that came so many wonderful things. Millions of people were introduced to Krishna, and I would not be here teaching this class if it were not for the grace of my spiritual master, who learned from Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So let me offer my most humble, respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, whose mercy in bringing this wonderful practice of hearing and chanting and Krishna consciousness to the West, and of course translating these wonderful stories. So what we're going to do is we're going to engage in some chanting that he introduced as a prime benediction, as originally taught by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The right chord. Krishna Prestaya Bhutana Srimate Sirasvampanada Paramam Saitinamane Namo Vishnu Padaya Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, thank you for joining me. If this is your first time, please, I would recommend going back to Krishna Book Reading 1 in my YouTube video, YouTube channel, and listening from the beginning. Feel free to comment, share, subscribe, and let people know about this channel. Let people know if they want to hear this wonderful Krishna Katha or the pastimes of Krishna and the philosophy that is in the Krishna book as well. It's very wonderful. So our last chapter we were reading about the gopis being attracted to Krishna's flute, the sound of Krishna's flute. Krishna is the transcendental flute player. He plays flutes. He actually has 3 different kinds of flutes, a small, a medium, and a large. But he is a transcendental flute player, and it was described that when he plays the flute, it emanates all the way throughout the universe, so all living entities are benefited, and the residents and the animals and the plants, everything in Vrindavan is captivated. Like the little calves they've got the nipple of their mother in their mouth, and they're just like, just stunned by the beauty of the flute. And everybody and everything, we were talking about last time that how the gopis are they are the ultimate devotees because they give everything that they have to the service of Krishna. And it's similar about all the residents. Everything in Vrindavan is offering its service. Every living entity in the spiritual world is offering their service to Krishna. That is our natural tendency. And we are also engaging in the service of Krishna, but most of us in the material world are actually serving him through his illusory energy as Maya. And we'll actually get into the story about Durga a little bit here. There's this story that we're going to read today. We want to be the Lord and controller, so therefore we turn our focus to the material energy under the service of the shadow of the Shakti energy of Radharani, the shadow of Radharani, Maya Devi, goddess Durga. And we serve her, and she actually torments us mercilessly because we want to serve her. Said that she's not very proud of her service. She's embarrassed by what she has to do, but she does it really well. But if a living entity just cries out to Krishna, engages in service Krishna comes. It's always said that there's a saying that if you take 1 step towards Krishna will take 100 steps towards you. 1 step towards God, God will take 100 steps towards you. But it does take humility and a willingness to say that I've made a mistake. I'm unhappy here without you, God. Please let me come back to you. There's so many wonderful stories that describe that, not only in the Vedas, but also in the Bibles and the stories of Jesus, where the prodigal son, right? The prodigal son we've heard about is where the person left and he came back. He came back and he felt like I'm the most sinful, and I will just go to see if I can be a servant of my father. But the father was just willingly, openly accepting. Krishna wants us all to come back. So we want to learn to serve like the waters that we were reading, the waters of the Jamuna that move towards them with the lotus flowers in her hands to Krishna, to offer them to Krishna. And so many things. To Govardhan Hill. Govardhan Hill makes everything so nice for Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends. There's so many wonderful and beautiful analogies in this last story. So what we're going to do is we're going to read now into this next story. I didn't really tell you the title because it's a very wonderful and beautiful and awesome. I can't think of other adjectives to describe it. amazing. It's called the stealing the garments of the unmarried Gopi girls. And in the transcendental sense, when we're talking about transcendental world, there is no lust. There is no lust in the sense of like sexual lust. There's only love for Krishna. And when we manifest that love for Krishna, it manifests as lust. And that one of those lusts is, of course, the lust of sexual, but also the desire, the greedy, self-centered desire to control and own. So when we, the British during when they occupied the India, right, for a while, and they would hear stories like this, oh, Krishna steals the Gopi girls' clothes because he's perverted and stuff like that. What kind of religion is this, But actually, we will hear this is beyond a sexual thing, right? So, according to Vedic civilization, unmarried girls from 10 to 14 years of age are supposed to worship either Lord Shiva or the goddess Durga in order to get a nice husband. And this is still done today. I don't know about the 10 to 14, maybe in some places, but generally speaking, Indian girls will worship. This was a Vedic tradition. You would worship goddess Durga because goddess Durga is a demigoddess of the material energy, and so therefore you can pray to her. You can pray to Lord Shiva for material benediction because they're demigods and demigoddesses with a certain kind of power to fulfill these desires. And we'll see that there are other stories, not only here, but in the Srimad Bhagavatam at large, where demons will actually pray to goddess Durga or goddess Shiva, Lord Shiva, for material mystic powers or, many things like that. Devotees of Krishna are more intelligent than that. They don't really want a material benefit. They just want to serve Krishna. So they basically, but as we see here, there's some more to this. But the unmarried girls of Vrindavan were already attracted by the beauty of Krishna. They were, however, engaged in the worship of the goddess Durga in the beginning of the Hemanta season, just prior to the winter season. The first month of Hemanta is called Agrahayana, October, November, and at that time, all the unmarried gopis of Vrindavan began to worship goddess Durga with a vow. All right, let's see, here's something more. We just say, well, how is that? If they're worshiping husbands for goddess Durga, is that really a good thing? Well, we'll read that. They first ate Haivishyana, a kind of foodstuff prepared by boiling together mung dal and rice without any spices or turmeric. According to the Vedic injunction, this kind of foodstuff is recommended to purify the body before one enacts a ritualistic ceremony. All the unmarried gopis in Vrindavan used to daily worship goddess Katyayani early in the morning after taking bath in the river Jamuna. Katyayani is another name for goddess Durga. The goddess is worshipped by preparing a doll made out of sand mixed with earth from the bank of the Jamuna. It is recommended in the Vedic scriptures that a deity be made from different kinds of material elements. It can be painted, made of metal, made of jewels, made of wood, earth, or stone, or can be conceived within the heart of the worshiper. That's a very interesting point. That there are a lot of stories also in the Vedas of people who have actually couldn't afford to worship Krishna or worship, and so they will, in their mind, have so many wonderful things, giving cows and beautiful cows to the Brahmanas, or they would give Krishna food that they would make, but they don't have the money to buy the food, so they imagine it in their mind. But the mind is also an energy of Krishna's. It is a material energy. But if we're utilizing our material energy to serve Krishna, so that even if we're thinking about Krishna in the day, this is spiritually beneficial. The Mayavadi philosophers take all these forms of the deity to be imaginary, but actually they are accepted in the Vedic literatures to be identical with either the Supreme Lord or respective demigods. So that's a very important point, because the Mayavadi philosophers believe they're monists. In other words, they believe that it's just one energy, and that all forms, all concepts of like Krishna and Shiva, they're all just manifestations of the unmanifested Brahman, and that you realize that you're a Brahman and that Brahman is everything. But as we've learned from, there's really not very authoritative scriptures in the Vedas to support that clearly. So, but there is clear indication that there is a personal Supreme Personality of Godhead, that we are all persons. We're not just, we are Brahman, but we are also Jivatma, the individual entity. We are not the Supreme. We are marginal, and so many things that we discussed about Mayavadi. We'll get into that at another time. The unmarried gopis used to prepare the deity of goddess Durga and worship it with chandala, pulp, garland, incense, lamps, and all kinds of presentation, fruits, grains, and twigs of plants. After worshiping it, it is custom to pray for some benediction. The unmarried girls used to pray with great devotion to goddess Katyani, addressing her as follows: O supreme eternal energy of the personality of Godhead, O supreme mystic power, O supreme controller of this material world, O goddess, please be kind to us and arrange for our marriage with the son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna. So that's the catch. They wanted to, they're praying to Durga not for just some ordinary Joe in the village. They want to have Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as their husband. And you can act, and there, and like I've said in the beginning, this kind of relationship that you have either is as a neutral Santa Rasa, or as a friendship relationship like the Coward Boys, or a servant relationship like Lord Jesus Christ did with Krishna, or with the Supreme Lord. Father or mother, parental, like Nanda Maharaj, and of course the beloved, or the conjugal. The conjugal is like the gopis. So these gopis wanting to have a marriage. We think, with our material minds, we're thinking, well, how could that be? Just like the British used to think, how could that be? That doesn't sound right, because they think of like man and wife in the material world, or I'm marrying these girls, or I'm in the forest with these girls. In the material world, in a material sense, it would be perverted, it would be wrong. But this is transcendental, and it has no dint of sexuality, perverted sexuality. So we prayed that. The Vaishnavas generally do not worship any demigods. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has strictly forbidden all worship of the demigods for anyone who wants to advance in pure devotional service. Yet, the gopis, who are beyond compare in their affection for Krishna, were seen to worship Durga. The worshippers of demigods also sometimes mention that the gopis also worshipped goddess Durga, but we must understand the purpose of the gopis. Generally, people worship goddess Durga for some material benediction. Here, the gopis pray to the goddess become wives of Lord Krishna. The purport is that if Krishna is the center of activity, a devotee can adopt any means to achieve that goal. The gopis could adopt any means to satisfy or serve Krishna. That was a super excellent characteristic of the gopis. They worshipped goddess Durga completely for 1 month in order to have Krishna as their husband. Every day they prayed for Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, to become their husband. And of course, later in this Krishna book, we'll read about Rukmini, Krishna capturing Rukmini, and there's a very similar theme in there where she was worshiping goddess Durga for Krishna to be her husband. So they don't want this Joe, or that Abdul, or whatever. They don't want the average guy. They want the main Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that's fine, because every living entity has an eternal relationship with Krishna. So we're all. It's a great analogy to take personally. We can achieve so many ways to try to rekindle our relationship, or remember our relationship with Krishna that is eternal. Early in the morning, the gopis used to go to the bank of the Jamuna to take bath. They would assemble together, capturing each other's hands, and loudly sing of the wonderful pastimes of Krishna. It is an old system among Indian girls and women that when they take bath in the river, they place their garments on the bank and dip into the water completely naked. The portion of the river where the girls and women take bath was strictly prohibited to any male member, and this is still the system. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing the minds of the unmarried young gopis, benedicted them with their desired objective. They had prayed for Krishna to become their husband, and Krishna wanted to fulfill their desires. At the end of the month, Krishna, along with his friends, appeared on the scene. Another name of Krishna is Yogeshvara, or master of all mystic powers. By practicing meditation, the yogi can study the psychic movement of other men, and certainly Krishna could understand the desire of the gopis. Appearing on the scene, Krishna immediately collected all the garments of the gopis and climbed up in a nearby tree, and with smiling face began to speak to them. "My dear girls," he said, "please come here one after another and pray for your garments and then take them away. I'm not joking with you, I'm just telling the truth. I have no desire to play any joke with you, for you have observed the regulative principles for 1 month by worshiping Goddess Katyayani. Please do not come here all at once, come alone. I want to see each of you in your complete beauty, for you all have thin waists. I requested you to come alone. Now please comply." When the girls in the water heard such joking words from Krishna, they began to look at one another and smile. They were very joyous to hear such a request from Krishna because they were already in love with him. Out of shyness, they looked at one another, but they could not come out of the water because they were naked. Due to remaining in the water for a long time, they felt cold and were shivering. Yet upon hearing the pleasing and joking words of Govinda, their minds were perturbed with great joy. They began to tell Krishna, "Dear son of Nanda Maharaj, please do not joke with us in that way. It is completely unjust to us. You are a very respectable boy because you are the son of Nanda Maharaj, and you are very dear to us, but you should not play this joke on us because now we are all shivering from the cold water. Kindly deliver our garments immediately, otherwise we shall suffer." They then began to appeal to Krishna with great submission. "Dear Shama Sundar," they said, "we are all your eternal servitors. Whatever you order us to do, we are obliged to perform without hesitation because we consider it our religious duty. But if you insist on putting this proposal to us, which is impossible to perform, then certainly we will have to go to Nanda Maharaj and lodge a complaint against you. If Nanda Maharaj does not take action, then we shall tell King Kamsa about your misbehavior." Upon hearing this appeal by the unmarried gopis, Krishna answered, "My dear girls, if you think that you are my eternal servitors, and you are always ready to execute my order, then my request is that, with your smiling faces, please come here alone, one after another, and take away your garments. If you do not come here, however, and if you lodge complaints to my father, I shall not care anyway, for I know my father is old and cannot take any action against me." When the gopis saw that Krishna was strong and determined, they had no alternative but to abide by his order. One after another, they came out of the water, but because they were completely naked, they tried to cover their nakedness by placing their left hand over their pubic area. In that posture, they were all shivering. Their simple presentation was so pure that Lord Krishna immediately became pleased with them. All the unmarried gopis who prayed to Katyayani to have Krishna as their husband were thus satisfied. A woman cannot be naked before any male except her husband. The unmarried gopis desired Krishna as their husband, and he fulfilled their desire in this way. Being pleased with them, he took their garments on his shoulder and began to speak as follows. "My dear girls, you have committed a great offense by going naked in the river Jamuna. Because of this, the predominating deity of the Jamuna, Varuna Dev, has become displeased with you. Please, therefore, just touch your foreheads with folded palms and bow down before the demigod Varuna in order to be excused from this offensive act." The gopis were all simple souls, and whatever Krishna said they took to be true. In order to be freed from the wrath of Varunadev, as well as to fulfill the desired end of their vows and ultimately please their worshipable Lord, Krishna, they immediately abided by his orders. Thus, they became the greatest lovers of Krishna and his most obedient servitors. Nothing can compare to the Krishna consciousness of the gopis. Actually, the gopis did not care for Varuna or any other demigod. They only wanted to satisfy Krishna. Krishna became very ingratiated and satisfied by the simple dealings of the gopis, and he immediately delivered their respective garments one after another. Although Krishna cheated the young unmarried gopis and made them stand naked before him and enjoyed joking words with them, and although he treated them just like dolls and stole their garments, they were still pleased with him and never lodged complaints against him. This attitude of the gopis is described by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he prays, "My dear Lord Krishna, you may embrace me or trample me under your feet, or you may make me broken-hearted by never being present before me. Whatever you like, you can do, because you have complete freedom to act. But in spite of all your dealings, you are my Lord eternally, and I have no other worshipable object." This is the attitude of the gopis towards Krishna. Lord Krishna was pleased with them, and since they all desired to have him as their husband, he told them, "My dear well-behaved girls, I know of your desire for me and why you worshipped goddess Katyayani, and I completely approve of your action. Anyone whose full consciousness is always absorbed in me, even in lust, is elevated. As a fried seed cannot fructify, so any desire in connection with my loving service cannot produce any fruitive result as in ordinary karma." So this idea of karma of course meaning action, what we do in the material world is considered karma or action. But the reaction of karma is the good or bad that we experience. So our past deeds, like seeds that are being fructified, we receive from the actions that we've done in the past. And in the material world, we are continuously burning off karma and building up new karma. But if we're serving Krishna in loving service, this karma is actually burned off. Like the analogy is like a field with seeds, and you set fire to it, you burn the seeds. So you start to eliminate your karma by serving Krishna. And another analogy is when you have a full fan moving, that's your karmic reaction going. When you unplug that fan, the fan starts to slow down. But there may still be some reaction that you're still getting as you're practicing your service to Krishna in different ways. Is burning off, is making that fan go slower and slower, but you may be still experiencing some karmic reactions from past deeds. So this is the analogy that anything that's done in service of Krishna cannot produce new karmic reactions. There is new karma. There is a statement in the Brahma Samhita, "Karmani nirdati kintu cha bhakti bhajam." Everyone is bound by his fruitive activities, but the devotees, because they work completely for the satisfaction of the Lord, suffer no reactions. Similarly, the gopis' attitude towards Krishna, although seemingly lusty, should not be considered like the lusty desire of ordinary women. The reason is explained by Krishna himself. Activities in devotional service are transcendental to any fruitive result. "My dear gopis," Krishna continued, "your desire to have me as your husband will be fulfilled, because with this desire you have worshipped goddess Katyayani. I promise that during the next autumn season you shall be able to meet with me, and you shall enjoy me as your husband." Taking shelter of the shade of the trees, Krishna became very happy. While walking, he began to address the inhabitants of Vrindavan. "My dear Shloka Krishna, my dear Varutapa, my dear Bhadrasena, my dear Sudama, my dear Subala, my dear Arjuna, my dear Vishala, my dear Rishabha. Just look at those most fortunate trees of Vrindavan." So these are his cowherd friends, different names of his cowherd friends. They have dedicated their lives to the welfare of others. Individually, they are tolerating all kinds of natural disturbances such as hurricanes, torrents of rain, scorching heat, and piercing cold, but they are very careful to relieve our fatigues and give us shelter. My dear friends, I think they are glorified in this birth as trees. They are so careful to give shelter to others that they are like noble, highly elevated charitable men who never deny charity to one who approaches them. No one is denied shelter by these trees. They supply various kinds of facilities to human society, such as leaves, flowers, fruit, shade, roots, bark, flavor extracts, and fuel. They are the perfect example of noble life. They are like a noble person who has sacrificed everything possible, his body, mind, activity, intelligence, and words, in engaging in the welfare of all living entities. So the devotee of Krishna, there are many people who are very philanthropic, and I'm not to say that these people are not noble. They are noble, the ones who give of themselves. This is a much better way to present things in this life, to be giving instead of being so self-centered and selfish, which is our natural tendency. But the devotee of Krishna is actually is engaging in the greatest welfare of all living entities by giving people not just material benefits, really, but actually a spiritual benefits of understanding that this is not your home, this is not your body, you're not your body, you're not your mind, this is not your home. You will not find happiness here. You are away from Krishna, and the way to go back to Krishna is this way. He's showing you the way to go back to Krishna, and so he cares about all living entities to return to Krishna. It is said that the devotee of Krishna is actually heartbroken by the, I guess you could say, really the unnecessary pain that living entities put themselves into by being in ignorance, thinking that they're just like the bird in the tree, thinking that this is where I will find happiness, and all they eat is the thorns of their misery. Thus the Supreme Personality of Godhead walked on the banks of the Jamuna, touching the leaves of the trees and their fruits, flowers, and twigs, and praising their glorious welfare activities. Different people may accept certain welfare activities to be beneficial for human society according to their own views, but the welfare activity that can be rendered to people in general for eternal benefit is the spreading of the Krishna consciousness movement. Everyone should be prepared to propagate this movement. As instructed by Lord Chaitanya, one should be humbler than the grass on the ground and more tolerant than a tree. The tolerance of the trees is explained by Lord Krishna himself. And those who are engaged in the preaching of Krishna consciousness should learn lessons from the teachings of Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya through their direct disciplic succession. It's very wonderful because Krishna is talking about all these trees, but you can take it to a deeper meaning of giving people Krishna, despite how they may respond to you. Just hearing the name of Krishna, even in anger, benefits so many living entities. And we have to learn to put aside our false ego, basically. When we're like, oh, I don't know how they're going to respond to me. They may not like me. Well, that's what the devotee does. That's what the pure devotee does. He gives the seeds of bhakti to everyone. Whether they're going to take to it now or later, it's hard to say, but out of his complete and utter mercy, this is what he does. And we should look to that example of not only cultivating our humility and our tolerance and our love for Krishna, but also our desire to give and share it to everyone else. That is the greatest welfare activity that a person can do. While passing through the forest of Vrindavan on the bank of the Jamuna, Krishna sat down at a beautiful spot and allowed the cows to drink the cold and transparent water of the Jamuna. Being fatigued, the cowherd boys, Krishna and Balaram, also drank. After seeing the young gopis taking bath in the Jamuna, Krishna passed the rest of the morning with the boys. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 22nd chapter of Krishna, stealing the garments of the unmarried Gopi girls. Beautiful. Just absolutely amazing. I've read these stories so many times, and when I'm reading it, it's just like entering into it again. It's just more and more sweet every time you can hear it. So just these kinds of things that we are encouraged in the material world to, oh, this book is great, or this news is great, or this, go on Facebook and look at this, or watch these movies, or whatever. And it's just like, it's like being pushed further and further towards a mirage in a desert. There's nothing there. There's nothing really attractive about it. Maybe initially it looks attractive, and then we realize, oh yeah, I've seen that. But when you go to the oasis and you see Krishna, and you hear about Krishna, and you hear from your spiritual master, the same thing, but you hear it in a completely different light. You never do that with material things. But with spiritual matter, it's an endless well of wisdom. So thank you very much. We are going to chant. Always chant, every day. Take off my capo. Nitago, Haribo, Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo, Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo, Haribo, Nitago, Nitago. Haribo, Nitago, Nitago. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you for next class. Namaste.